Hey guys, higher and higher inflation is in the news these days, so I wanted to shed a light on it. I think it's really important to understand because it affects every one of us, whether you're trying to make a living, make ends meet, or get ahead in life. The better you understand the basics, the better that you can protect yourself and your family. You see it in the news where it just jumped a whopping 4.2% recently, even surprising the Fed. Now the question I ask myself is, why is it surprising the Fed, whose very job is to manage the economy and inflation itself? It really makes me think if these experts are experts at all, or are they just winging it on a hope and a prayer? If higher levels of inflation are here to stay and will continue, there are those that are going to be benefiting from it and those that are going to be on the losing end. And I want all you guys to be on the winning side of it. So in this video, I'm going to simply define what inflation is, why it's rising, how it's measured, and how to protect yourself so you guys can benefit from inflation. So if you want to find out what these answers are, keep on watching. So what the heck is inflation? Well, inflation is the level at which the value of the currency is falling and the general level of goods and services is rising. In other words, inflation is the decline of our purchasing power of the US dollar. So simply stating, the basic costs of goods like food and housing are just getting more expensive. Think of your dollar as a melting ice cube, where every year goes by, you as a consumer will be able to buy less and less goods with your money. As an example, when you go to your grocery store, a gallon of milk used to cost $2.50, but now costs $3.50. Or when you go to your favorite coffee shop, you used to pay $1.75 for a cup of coffee. Now it's $2.50. Products just cost more. Your dollar just does not go as far as it used to. Personally, I feel that inflation is the stealthy thief that steals our time and money without us really noticing it. So back to the big jump of the 4.2% inflation we've had recently. Why is higher inflation happening now? Well, the big jump has to do with the massive printing of the money that we've had in the last 2 years, where we debased or diluted our currency by a whopping 25%. In 2020, we had the $2.2 trillion CARES Act, where they printed massive amounts of money due to the pandemic to try to save our economy. And recently, our government just passed the $1.9 trillion coronavirus rescue package, where all of us, or most of us, got another stimmy check. Guys, I want to let you know that this amount of money printing is unprecedented. And it's one of the main reasons why we see this huge jump of 4.2% of inflation recently. The printing will likely continue if you take the cues of our current administration. There is a direct correlation between increasing the money base and the rise of inflation. If you print more money, the amount of goods doesn't change. However, if you print more money, households will have more cash to spend on goods. If there's more money chasing the same amount of goods, prices will go up. And given that we just printed $4.1 trillion, the 2.2 and the 1.9, you guys can see why we're having these higher inflation rates. This massive printing of money is also the main reason why you see stock market and real estate prices go to new heights, which is another topic of discussion. We have a lot of money in the system chasing scarce goods, trying to find a return. In regards to real estate, if you guys are interested, check out my other videos on the booming places to buy real estate in the next decade. It will give you an idea of the best places to buy to preserve and increase your wealth and offset inflation. But back to inflation. To give you a better understanding, how is inflation actually measured? Generally, it is tracked by the Consumer Price Index, or CPI for short. The CPI is an economic indicator that measures prices paid by consumers for a market of consumer goods and services, such as transportation, housing, and food, as you can see in this chart. But I have to tell you, this CPI index is flawed per many experts' opinions. Many people have said it's not an accurate representation of how prices have escalated in many areas of our lives. I don't know about you, but to me, on a gut level, that feels right. Doesn't prices in general feel like they're rising higher than even this surprising 4.2% inflation rate? I'm a great fan of Lyn Alden, a very well respected and a talented macroeconomist. If you guys want to have a deeper dive into inflation, please check out her work. In her chart, she shows how the CPI is not the most accurate measure of inflation. You see the CPI line on the right bottom, and how everything that most people buy in life is rising at a faster rate than the CPI numbers. She states that assuming that a house, food, healthcare, tuition, childcare, and commodities are not a big part of your budget, then CPI may have been a reasonably accurate measure of inflation over the past 3 decades. On a common sense level, if this is the case, why are experts using CPI numbers if it's not an accurate measure of inflation in our economy? I'm thinking to myself, what world do we live in when most people do not pay for a house or pay for their children's tuition and healthcare? Those are like the main bills every citizen is concerned about, yet our leaders are judging inflation mostly on CPI numbers. However, I just want to let you guys know that the main takeaway here is that the CPI is just a gauge, a data point, so to speak. Don't completely rely on those numbers for an accurate representation of inflation, because per Lyn's chart, they are much higher. So if inflation is here to stay and will continue coming, how do we as citizens protect ourselves and benefit from it? I know in our entire lives, we've grown up to think that the more cash that we have, the better we are. It feels good to have money set aside. But what if now money in the bank is more of a liability rather than an asset? Now remember the melting ice cube analogy I referenced in the beginning? What if the dollars that you're holding are really melting away in purchasing power? It's really something to think about. And even I had a really hard time getting my head around that in the beginning. If the dollar is losing purchasing power due to inflation, the short answer is to get yourself out of cash by buying scarce assets that preserve your purchasing power. To protect yourself from inflation, these are what the experts recommend. First on the list is stocks and index funds. Stocks provide inflation protection in 2 main ways. The first is that stocks often pay a dividend. The second inflation-fighting component that stocks provide is growth. Over time, the stock you bought and the stock market in general tends to move higher. In short, when you buy a stock, you're going to get a dividend by the company. And over time, hopefully the stock price rises, which increases the value of your investment. This increase fights off inflation. Okay, second way to protect yourself from inflation is to buy gold. Gold has always been considered a hedge against inflation. It's a real physical asset that has been part of humanity for 5 millennia and is considered a store of value. I realize that the idea of buying gold might be a foreign concept to a lot of people, just because it's really not emphasized in our culture. But Google it for yourself to see if it's a viable option for you. Third option to protect yourself from inflation is to buy positive cash flow real estate. Owning real estate can be a great inflation hedge. Over time, depending on what part of the country you live in, you may have noticed that home prices have increased dramatically. It protects you similar to stocks because you receive rent, similar to a stock dividend. And house prices over the long term tend to go up, just as stock prices do. The fourth and probably most controversial hedge against inflation is Bitcoin. This is why you see a lot of Bitcoin in the news today, where there is a narrative that Bitcoin might be replacing gold. Now, whether you believe in Bitcoin or not, the inflation that we're having today and the money printing is one of the main reasons why people are buying Bitcoin. Bitcoin is seen as an inflation hedge mainly because of its limited supply of 21 million. And given the current economic climate we're in, we can see why many people are purchasing this new asset class. So much so that in a survey by NYDIG, one of the biggest and most respected crypto institutions in the space, 46 million people in the US now own some Bitcoin. Now, I'm not advocating buying Bitcoin, but I think it would be in your best interest to do some research on it and judge for yourself if it's right for you or not. Simply put, in all these strategies, the whole point is to get out of cash and buy assets that preserve your purchasing power. In the end, this is how you protect yourself from the high amount of inflation that we are all currently experiencing. I hope I have provided some food for thought. If you guys enjoyed this, please check out my other videos on saving money and how I generate passive income and the mistakes I made along the way. And I'll see you guys on the next one.